It is starting. Fantastic. So welcome to the Yarn Thing podcast with Marley Bird. I'm your host, Marley Bird. You can catch the Yarn Thing podcast live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 12 o'clock on the East Coast, 9 o'clock on the West Coast, and 11 o'clock in the Midwest. If you are anywhere else in the world and would like to join us for the live broadcast, please Google what time 10 o'clock Mountain Time is for you. I do live in Denver, Colorado, and you can come and join the fun. Usually there's an audio broadcast on Blog Talk Radio, but it is not playing very friendly lately. And so that is not happening right now. So we have the live podcast on Facebook Live and on YouTube live streaming. So either area that you are joining me today, welcome. We are glad you're here. Let's say thank you to our sponsors, the Buffalo Wool Company, Erin Lane Bags, Red Heart Yarns, Stitches.events, Craftsy.com, and last but not least, Creative Bug. So if you want to check out more about the sponsors, please visit marleybird.com. Click on the sponsor menu at the top of the page, and you can find a direct link to each one of them. So today's guest, you guys, is somebody I have been a fan of since I started really getting involved in the knitting community, because as you know, I was a crocheter first. And when I became a knitter, everybody talked about Mason-Dixon knitting and how these two women came together on the internet and became friends, and then they met, and then they all the things together. And I was like, that is such a fantastic story, because you guys know me, I am a big like joiner. I want to bring friends together and create community. And the fact that these two women did that and created an amazing community surrounded by this, surrounded around this friendship is amazing to me. And it's shocking that after almost 11 years in the industry, this is the first time I've ever gotten a chance to talk to them. And I am thrilled to have Anne and Kay on the podcast today from Mason-Dixon Knitting. So hello, you two.
Hello.
I'm so excited you're here. And thank you for joining me on the very first video podcast of the Yarn Thing podcast. This is a great way to start.
This is great. We're very excited.
We
have a lot to show you. We have a lot to show and tell.
So I want to give people who might not know much about Mason-Dixon knitting, especially like crocheters, they might not know very much. Let's give them like the history. Tell us your story. How did it all start?
Well, it started on the internet. And it was the internet before blogs and before Twitter and things like that. We met on a yarn company website. It was Rowan. So it was Anne from Nashville and me from New York and hundreds of British women who love knitting those patterns. And we met and we eventually started emailing, and then blogging became a thing. So this was around 2003 when we started our blog. And because we had the constraint of not living in the same town, we tended to communicate a lot in writing. And so it was just very natural for us to blog in this kind of letter writing style. And, we did a couple of books. Here's our first book.
Yay.
That's Anne. It's Anne. You still look like that. And it's 10
glasses.
That's me. I got to wear the hat. We flipped and got to wear the hat.
We didn't have the budget for glasses. That came later.
That's awesome.
That is funny that we did, because we always wear glasses. We are so nearsighted. It is not even funny. But anyway, so that became a blog, and we just loved it. We loved doing the books. And it's like a real place to us, the blog. And then about a year ago, we completely relaunched it as a daily knitting magazine. And what happened really was we kept talking about how we wanted this thing to exist. We wanted there to be a place where knitters and crocheters, although we don't really talk about the technicalities of crochet or about crochet patterns, but we are a very crochet friendly knitting website. And I mean, we do sometimes just blog about beautiful crochet that we've seen, in the hopes that one will drop from the sky for us, somebody make it for us. That actually did happen to me. I got somebody to crochet something that I really wanted. So anyway, we're there every single day, 365 days a year. It sounds kind of relentless, but it's really fun. And we have this work. What?
Oh, you know what? It's so much fun. I mean, my background is in book publishing, and so this is like a dream come true for me. And for Kay too, who's like, you know, a big writer and has always, you know, been in the world of writing and things like that. But to like the trick with the magazine with Mason-Dixon the way it is now is we have a lot of writers who are working, you know, writing for us and writing things that we don't have any expertise in and don't have any background in. And so it's just broadened completely the kinds of things that we can talk about. We have an amazing how-to series that we launched this year with our friends in England. We love England, by the way, if you can't tell. But it's a series called A Year of Techniques, and here, visual aid. This is, huh?
That's Jen's face.
I know, this is Jen. She's like a genius. And her husband, Jim, is also a genius. And they've created this series of monthly projects with a teachable moment in each of the projects.
Oh, cool.
So every month for the past, you know, almost a year now, we've been featuring her how-to videos on our site with her book and her patterns. And we brought in yarns to support to go with each project. So it's turned into this wonderful thing that we would never have been able to do on the blog back in the day. So it's stuff like that. It's fun.
That's awesome. It's like the modern day sort of pen pal thing, and everybody just got to watch you do it live, right? It was very public.
Yeah, and you know, there was a lot. You know, I think the blog was much more sort of project oriented. It was very much, you know, whatever we happen to be knitting at the moment. And so now we're publishing books ourselves, pattern books every quarter, a series that we're calling the Mason-Dixon Knitting Field Guides. And so now we're knitting tons of stuff from our own books, which is truly a dream come true. There's a visual aid. Yeah, that's the one that just came out. It's called Sequences. And
I have to talk so that my picture gets bigger than your picture.
Okay, I'll shut up, all right?
And we did this one with Cecilia Campochiaro, who's one of the living legends of knitting right now. She's one of the most creative thinkers we've encountered in the world of knitting. And it's all very simple knit purl stitches.
Wait, I have a visual.
You create these amazing textures, like the one Anne is wearing around her neck.
This is, I hope you can see it, but it's knit and purl patterns in super delicious yarn. It's the most hypnotic knitting I've ever done. I didn't knit this piece, I knit another one, but you know, there's a time when knitting is a really simple thing, and it's about the sort of mesmerizing quality of it, and that's what this stuff is all about. So
that's awesome. So the name of the book, Kay, when you held it up, it's called Sequences?
Well, this is field guide number 5. So they're called Mason-Dixon Knitting Field Guides.
Okay.
And we sell them on our site, and we also have a really nice list of stockists of local yarn stores who are selling them now, which really makes us happy because local yarn stores are so important to the knitting community. So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, you can get them at your local yarn store. You can get them from us. We also sell a digital version on Ravelry. Anne has all 5 of them there.
They're really cute. We have a wonderful editor we're working with, Melanie Fallick, who...
Oh, I love Melanie!
Well, guess what?
That's you!
I know, we're kind of a fan. But here's, you know, there's one. This is all crazy wild yarns that, you know, we found beautiful patterns that make crazy yarns look lovely and not like you've jumped out of a clown car.
Yep.
Although, not that there's anything wrong with it, Anne. Say that like it's a bad thing.
Okay, having just knit 3 of the craziest sweaters I've ever made, I'm a fan of the crazy clown yarn. This is Fair Isle. This one, Kay is wearing one of the sweaters from this one.
That's beautiful.
Okay. It's called Hadley.
I'm going to stand up so you can see how nice the shaping is. Look at that.
Kay's torso.
That's my torso.
It's a Veronique Avery design, who's just an amazing designer.
Awesome too. She's awesome.
Anyway. So there's just a lot of fun, man. We're, you know, every single day there's something new we hear from our knitters that they're excited about. We have a forum on our site called The Lounge. People hang out there, share their projects, you know, solve the world's problems, you know, just have a great time in community, you know, 24 hours a day, which is how Kay and I met. So we were like, we have to have a forum on our new site. Why would we not do that? It's so much fun. So anyway, it's all,
It's so awesome. So one of the things I always ask people, because most designers, you've probably learned this over the years, is they always have like, this is what I was doing before I became a designer. And then I decided to take this leap and become, full-time into what I'm doing. So before you two met and you were conversing back and forth with the blog, like what were you doing beforehand? And is this your full-time job now? And then I've got so many more questions. So here we go.
That's great. Yeah. Kay was an attorney, like a full-time, big-time New York City, butt kicking. Yeah. That was Kay.
Sometimes getting my own butt kicked also, but we would get into
I was working in book publishing and editing. There's not that much butt kicking in my realm, honestly. But, we had both quit work when we had little kids. So, the blog came about at a time where we had all this type A energy and, our careers were now put on hold for a while. So that all that energy went into that. And so when we decided to start this site as a real business we set up a complete, organization that we certainly never had before. So we're a going concern and very serious about it as an enterprise. So it's full time. That's all day, every day, baby.
That's how I started the podcast. I'm very type A, and I left work to have 3 kids, and I just couldn't stay home. Like it was the hardest job I've ever done in my life, was staying home, being a full-time mom. Hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I just needed to find some sort of an outlet. And so the podcast started that for me. Mm-hmm. What's amazing to me is when I think of Mason-Dixon knitting, I think of a log cabin blanket and I think of dishcloths. So who knew that a blog and talking about a log cabin blanket and dishcloths would transition to a book, to transition to this new site that you have and everything else that you have coming together. Like in your wildest dreams, did you ever think this is a possibility of even something you'd even think about doing?
No.
No.
I remember when we got our book deal, we hadn't met in person yet, and we weren't even that used to talking on the phone to each other. So it was just a surreal moment in life where you were like, okay, I'm going to write a book with this lady I've never met, but it's going to be good because I know her really well from her writing. And I think that's what our whole community is really based on, this idea that you can actually know people. It's not like these are our virtual friends or our imaginary friends. Like through writing on the internet to each other, we actually know people. And the people who work with us now are almost to every single person, someone that we met online. Knitting can be so kind of isolating. And we both were knitters before the internet. So we remember what it was like to kind of go to the yarn store, and if there was somebody there, you'd be excited that you got to talk to somebody else about knitting, and then you'd go home and do it, and like everybody in your life thought it was just this weird thing that you did.
Yeah, it's going out of style. It's a lost art. Nobody does that anymore. And I was younger, and people were like, oh, why are you acting like you're so old? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, crazy.
Like, yeah, the coolest people I know are knitters, I mean, really, people who I wish someday to be half as cool as they are. But, the thing about the internet is you can, like, the frustration of, you have so much energy thinking about knitting and the things that you're curious about. And the internet makes it possible to find the other people who are as, wound up about it as you are. And so that's, to me, that is one of the wonderful things about the internet. And I will treasure that forever. That's been a huge gift.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like so excited to have you guys on the show. So now that you are doing the website full time, and you said that you're working on projects from your own books, like how else do you find that now let's rephrase this. How have you found that your knitting has changed from 2003 till now? Like what has
well, I'll go first, Kate. For me, we're living in this golden age of yarn. If you think about where yarn is now and the things that are available to us all that just didn't exist a decade ago, I think one change for me is really exploring the kinds of yarns there are in the world, and to be very open-minded about all different kinds of yarns. We have, on our site, we offer super fancy yarn, and we offer, brown sheep lamb's pride, because that's a really great blanket yarn.
A wonderful yarn.
Yeah, and it's not a rare yarn particularly, but it's the right yarn for a blanket. And
I have a mitered square blanket made out of it. It's awesome.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So I would say yarn for me is one of the things I've really been fascinated with. And also just this idea of some things don't have to be difficult to knit to be really beautiful and really satisfying. So exploring difficulty and simplicity back and forth. There's a knitting for every mood. And, that's what I love, is going back and forth between tricky things and easy things.
Awesome. How about you, Kay?
I tend to be one of these people that I get in a groove and I really stay in that groove. And so one of the things I'm still knitting today that I was knitting in 2003 is log cabin. Like, I'll never get tired of the fun of doing that. I really like easy knitting, like garter stitch, where the mental component of it is playing with colors, maybe varying the shapes of things a little bit. So in our first book, we talked a lot about log cabin because of this crazy enthusiasm, which I spread to Anne. She also likes log cabin a lot. And then, our fourth field guide was about log cabin. And I always, when I was describing it to people, I was saying that it's like Julia Child, her first book about cooking was, a big old book, 500 pages or something. And then as she got older, by the end of her life, one of her last cookbooks was called Julia's Kitchen Wisdom. And it was a little book like this. It was the same recipes, but, having worked with those recipes for her whole career, she had, ways to make them simpler, ways to make them more accessible. And so that's kind of what's happened to me with log cabin, is like, I still find it really interesting. I also still knit dish rags. Like, I'm a process knitter, so I have to have something to knit. And if I'm working on a sweater, like I have a sweater right now called Granito that is a wonderful sweater, and it's mindless for 80% of the time.
Is that by Hohi?
By Hohi, yes. Hohi Locatelli. It's a great sweater. But I'm at the part where you have to like think for about maybe 20 minutes, because you have to figure out, where you're going to put those little pocket openings at the bottom. Yeah. So I can procrastinate that for 2 or 3 weeks while I wait to have like the mental concentration to do that job. And so in the meantime, I need to have like more mindless things to knit, because I have to be knitting, of course. So for that, I do dish rags. I mean, I don't like it when people call it OCD, because this is not OCD. This is like just loving something so much, right? That, you only feel good when you've got the needles in your hands. And I'm kind of like that. So I have movie knitting and bus knitting and talking on the phone with Anne knitting. I have a lot of that.
Done a lot of that. One thing that's interesting about that log cabin field guide is that we have 6 dishcloth patterns in that field guide, and it's sort of a stealth tutorial in how to create log cabin projects. So, you end up with a stack of pretty little log cabin dishcloths, but you've also learned everything you need to know to knit log cabin forever. And we love that. And I think that kind of thought would have only occurred to us after having done our first book, where we talked about log cabin in a certain, and now we have a little more perspective on it. So the idea with that field guide is, sit down with this, make some dishcloths, have a good time, and all of a sudden you'll start thinking, much larger, more complicated projects of your own that you made up. It's very easy to be creative with log cabin.
Right. It's interesting. So I've always been a fan of log cabin, and a lot of people in my stitch group that I used to be a part of in Arvada made a lot of log cabins. So when I did one of my first books for Interweave, I created a log cabin or a crocheted log cabin. And then, I think they were like 12 by 12. I don't know. And I used a single double crochet stitch because it's like my favorite stitch because it has texture and you're not too bored with it. It's just easy. And it's one of my favorite projects in the whole book. Actually, that one is made using brown sheep. But it was in my mind, it was the inspiration from it was from you. It was because of the log cabin that you introduced to my knitting repertoire, so to speak.
If I could crochet, I'd crochet log cabins all the time too, because I can see the appeal of it with that method of construction. It's like crochet itself is kind of a log cabin technique. You're always picking up, right? Yep. And that's kind of an initial barrier to log cabin for knitters sometimes, is because at least the way I do log cabin involves binding off strips and then coming back to them and picking up in the bind off. And some people are like, I don't like to pick up stitches, but for crocheters, every stitch is a stitch, right?
They call that Tuesday. So, right? They're like, what? Yeah, it is. It's super easy. And I didn't want to do it as one big long one. And the only reason I chose not to do that was because to me, the log cabin is very similar to like a granny square. In like that, how you're going on. I was like, well, if I'm going to do a granny square, I'll do a granny square. But if I want to do something a little bit different, I wanted to make little sections and make them little motifs and then join them together. And I thought it was fun to do. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
There's no barrier to working in those little motifs because you don't have to sew.
Yep.
Right? Just crochet them together.
Yep. It's so fantastic. I love it. Through the years, what kind of like feedback have you gotten from various knitters and crocheters who have maybe come out to you and said, watching you guys and your friendship develop over all these years, or watching your path, it has affected me in such a way? Like what's been some of the feedback you've gotten from the various other people that you've met, some of the awesome, wonderful, most talented people you've met on the internet?
I think that it's really hard to answer that. Like we have, one of the things that happens to us, like when we go to Rhinebeck and we're in the book barn for both days of Rhinebeck, just to meet people. And a lot of times people will come up to us and say, your book was the first book that somebody gave me when I was learning how to knit. And, and they tell us about like all the patterns that they've made from our, like one person told us, I knit every single thing in your first book. And we're like, we didn't knit every single thing. Like there's two of us. So like, it's very inspiring. It makes you feel like, okay, we are doing something that the world values, that people are getting something out of this. It's apart from our own satisfaction in doing it. We always said when we started the blog, well, because there's two of us, we know at least one other person is reading it, right? But it's really, one of the things that's gratifying is, we still have readers and commenters that we know after all these years who were reading us back in 2003 and who have, stayed with us through this transition to being, more of we think of it as more inclusive, like we think that our friendship has expanded to include all these other writers and designers that we have on the site. It's just with more people, you can create more fun. Like we're always thinking, what would be fun for knitters? What do we think is fun, and what do we think would be fun sort of as a community on the internet to get involved in? And we can't do it all ourselves. We need other people's like just know-how and soul and heart. And so that's where we're going. And it's really gratifying, the people that have stayed with us through that. And now we have people who, have just joined us in the last year. And, we hope there'll be.
I know. Had someone asked the other day, it's like, where do I get at the very beginning of your correspondence? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to.
It's a long way back.
It's all there, but it's not exactly the most easy to find thing. But, as I think about how the community has grown, in the knitting world online, and how there's so many people who know each other so well, despite the fact they've never been in the same room together. Yeah. And, as we look around and talk with writers that we want to invite to come on, and be a part of what we're doing, and designers whose work we've admired for so long, and, you know, have the chance to work with their patterns. You know, it's an amazing, it's just an amazing thing to have this actually coming together, and to see, you know, a stack of field guides where, you know, a year ago we had one, you know, and we were like, well, that was a lot of work, you know. But to get a rhythm about, you know, how we're doing that, how we're doing everything, you know, bringing yarns in, working with yarn makers, makers who are not making yarn. We have some new things coming up that we're really excited about that are not exactly yarn. So, you know, it's just an opportunity to share all these people's talents with everybody all over the world.
Yeah. Let's talk about the contributors. So at the beginning it was started with 2, and then your community grew, and now you have contributors that are a big part of Mason-Dixon knitting. And do you want to tell me how how are they involved with it? How did you go through a selection process? Is it always growing? Are you like, how does it work for you?
Well, it's just a process of having conversations with people and sort of looking at the big picture of what we want our site to include. So when I say that, I mean, there's, you know, very technical how-to that we want to have on the site. So when Kate Atherley, you know, who's one of the great tech editors and designers and, you know, talents, comes to us and shows us this amazing motorcycle jacket that she designed in knitting, you know, not leather.
Right.
We were kind of knocked out by that. And so she wrote a tutorial on how to install a zipper, which, you know, Kay, how many zippers have you ever installed before reading this tutorial? Yeah. It's like massively terrifying to install a zipper on a hand knit. But
I know.
Yeah, right?
Even when I see, you know, tutorials on it, I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah. But I promise you, if you go read Kate's tutorial on how to install a zipper, it's pretty mind-blowing how, you know, elegantly she lays it out. And you read that and you go, okay, I can totally do that. And she also makes you think, well, I could just knit a motorcycle jacket in wool. Sure. You know, I mean, she has, you know, she's really good at what she does. So
wearing me down, really. She's really,
I know. Just
every time I see her in it, I'm like, damn.
I know. So there's that, you know, technical how-to. There's sort of, you know, we talked with Clara Parks about writing a column for us, sort of an advice column. And so Clara has this amazing ability to be incredibly soothing and, you know, supportive when people ask crazy questions. And so that's been a really interesting thing. Every single time she writes for us, it's like, I have no idea what she's going to send us, but it's going to be interesting and will reveal some component of knitting that I hadn't really thought about before. And then, you know, like Franklin Habit is he's our book columnist, and he is finding books that I did not know about at all. And I think in the world of self-published knitting books, which is so vibrant now, you know, that's a really helpful thing. So he's out there, you know, looking around for things that are unexpected and very cool, and writing for us regularly on that and other things too. And then, you know, we also wanted to have a little bit of food on the site. So we have an ongoing slow cooker odyssey, which is Carrington Fox writing, you know, about her adventures in, she has this old crock pot from like 1974. And so, you know, this is the core of what Carrington is working with, is some seriously vintage crock pots. And so she cooks up these recipes that are very simple and wonderful. And it's just another thing to have on the site, you know, another kind of thing. We know knitters like to eat.
You know, it's not so much about the slow cooker recipe as it is about Carrington's writing, because she just makes you laugh so hard. And
yeah,
you know, if she wants to write us a series of auto mechanics articles, I think we would publish them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, you know, it always comes back to, is this fun for people or useful for people? You know, the how-tos are really useful. There's tons of tutorials on the internet, and you know, it's just kind of random when you're looking for a how-to on the internet, whether you're going to get something that's good or whether you're going to get something with someone's cat. You know, mostly the pictures of the cat, which nothing wrong with that, Anne. She's got her cat right there.
But
you know, so we thought, at least, you know, we'll grow our collection of how-tos, and A Year of Techniques has really helped with that. But we'll only put something on our site if we think it really is a good tutorial. So when people look for it, you know, a how-to information on our site, it'll be good. And when, you know, and some of the way we get content is just people pitching us stuff. And it's just, you know, Anne has worked in publishing, so she's had this experience professionally. But for me, it's extremely flattering to be pitched.
It's flattering for also, just saying. It's
yeah, I mean, and so people come to us, you know, like, I think you know, we want to be known as a place that's fun. And so people come to us with ideas that they think are fun, and we get to, you know, publish them. And so it's, you never know what, it's going to be something different every day. And, you know, Sonia Phillip, we have this series of articles by this woman who's an amazing knitter, but her profession is she's an artist, and she also does sewing patterns that are really accessible. It's called 100 Acts of Sewing. And she does this series for us called Wear What You Make, where she combines her hand knits with these clothes that she's made for herself. And it's just so full of joy. And it's, you know, a lot of us, and I am guilty of this, like, we make the sweater and then we wear the sweater when we're going to be on a podcast, you know. Like, you know, I really, in my life, I need more inspiration about how to wear stuff that I make, because, you know, it's beautiful. We should wear it. And so, you know, we publish stuff like that just because we think, you know, it's very relevant to somebody who's handcrafting, whether it's knitting or crochet, or sewing.
Well, here, I'll pitch something to you. If you want any sort of a series of like a knitter's guide to crochet, like, I have my own video studio, so I can do anything you want. I do both.
It's awesome on TV.
Yeah, I got this.
It's like Shark Tank. It's like,
right?
Tank. Yeah.
I got you covered, girls. No problem at all.
Right.
I love it. I love that you have really taken this passion for a craft that you love and built a community, a career, and everything around it. I think you are living the dream of so many other knitters, crocheters, weavers, spinners, painters, a lot of different people, because a lot of those crafts, there are solo, you know, individual, sort of, you're in your solitude area doing it, but being able to connect with your people is amazing. And the fact that you're doing it all together in such a fantastic way is really awesome.
Thank you. It's fun.
So I do have a question for you, Anne. Coming from the publishing side of the world and jumping into knitting and crochet the way you have, something that we do hear a lot is that the publishing world is struggling. The publishing world is, you know, you don't want to write a book, you should self-publish a book. Oh, you don't make any money self-publishing a book. So for you, coming from the publishing side and deciding to jump into self-publishing and doing that on your own, like, what are some things you've learned? Like, what are some things that you could share as far as information, or, I mean, I don't know, any words of wisdom?
It's a totally fascinating thing for me to watch happen, the self-publishing phenomenon. I remember when I worked in New York, I worked at Simon & Schuster, the largest publisher in the world. I had a very lowly position working for a very famous editor. And he would, you know, occasionally, and he had been in the business for a really long time. And it's a very specific thing. I mean, I left a long time ago. It was like 1990. So it was back when book publishing was book publishing. There was no internet. You know, there's a really specific process that a project would take, you know, start to finish. It was very rigid. And now it's not rigid in any way at all. You can go to Simon & Schuster, having found a literary agent to represent you. You can do the absolute thing you did in 1985 to, you know, follow all the olden rules. But to me, what's fascinating is technology has made it possible to create a book yourself in a way. There are tools available mostly for free. I haven't done this, but I'd be curious to see if I could create a book for free, like with no production cost other than me doing it. And I've created books. We did a coloring book for knitters last year, which start to finish, the idea happened on, I think, October 12th. We had finished books available, you know, online December 8th.
Oh, wow. That's super fast.
Yeah, because I knew that the coloring book phenomenon was absolutely peaking at that moment. There was not a coloring book for knitters. And we had to get on that. That was clearly a thing that needed to exist.
It's not like we had anything else to do, Anne.
This is right when we were developing the new site. So, but we found this wonderful illustrator. You know, it's like things happened very quickly and well, and nothing went wrong. So it was a pretty seamless process. But my point is, you know, a traditional publisher taking a coloring book for knitters can do things with it that we couldn't. But for instance, a publisher did pick up this coloring book and put it into Walmart. And that's impossible for us as independent publishers to do. It was pretty easy for them. It was kind of a, you know, here's another coloring book. Walmart's like, great. And it was like, bleh, you know, giant thing happens really effortlessly. But we had a lot of success with our self-published version because we had our audience of people who were just dying for a coloring book for knitters. Okay, maybe that's not true, but it was at least a novelty. And at least we were there on the, you know, we feel good about our coloring book for knitters.
They were supportive.
And yeah, they were supportive. And it did well, and it paid for a lot of our development costs for the new site. So yay. But in terms of self-publishing in general, I would say it's, you know, in the knitting world is what I'm looking at right now. It feels like some of the most inventive and interesting publishing happening is people who have an idea, have enough chops or access to people who know how to put a book together, who come up with these books that are not books that a mainstream big publisher would take on. Right. But they can exist at a smaller scale and be very successful if you're clever about making sure that your production costs are controlled, making sure that they're edited well, making sure the photographs are exquisite. You know, there are a lot of very ugly self-published books around, period. I mean, that's just a fact. But the ones that you see really exploding have every single quality of a traditional mainstream published book. And, you know, for our field guides, I'm really proud of them. And I think a large part of it obviously goes to Melanie Fallick, who, you know, was publishing the most beautiful knitting books ever when she was at the big publishing house where she used to work. So we're lucky to have her. And that was not an accident that we really wanted to work with her. And she was game. So working with good people is a big part of the self-publishing puzzle to make it work properly.
Absolutely. So one last question for you guys. If I were to say over the last 15, 16, 17 years in knitting, what would you say was the most impactful thing, or what was something that you're just like, this is the biggest change, or this was huge for us, or I mean, whatever it may be?
I'm going to say independent yarn makers.
All right.
Interesting.
I think, you know, we go to the Knitting Trade Association convention now, and it's just, that used to be all the yarn was there. And now so much of the yarn is not coming from that. Just like in publishing, things have their way of, you know, just growing on their own from one person's passion. And we see all this beautiful yarn that we didn't even have words for some of this kind of yarn 10 years ago. Like I didn't know what a Corriedale was, or is that a thing? A cormo.
No, a cormo.
Obviously, I'm still not absolutely conversant, but it's
when people ask me what a cormo is, they're like, "What's a cormo?" And I'm like, okay.
Like a sandwich.
You know, I don't know what it is, but it's really awesome. But you know, knitters, you know, so that kind of gives knitters like all these expansive options that we didn't have 10 years ago, when it was pattern plus the yarn that was called for by the pattern. You know, like we just have a lot more options now. So it's more personal for people, and it's more passionate for people, I think.
Love that.
Okay, so I think the single biggest change in the past 15 years easily is the arrival of Ravelry.com. I would put that as a completely disruptive and amazing thing to happen, because there's so much to it that never could have happened before the internet. The database is extraordinary. I mean, you cannot believe how many patterns there are in there, and the way that it's opened up the horizon for independent designers, I think it's a double-edged sword sometimes. I think that the abundance of it is overwhelming. Sometimes I have a really hard time finding the thing I want to find. But I mean, that's why we're here, is because we do pattern roundups on Mason-Dixon all the time. Like, we will spend a huge amount of time looking for the perfect cowl using this yarn, you know. So we love Ravelry. We use it as a resource. We think the community there is amazing. And what it's allowed in terms of patterns being published one at a time is that never happened before at the scale that it's happening now, and that a designer can have one pattern become a humongous viral success. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not something that existed before Ravelry. So it's an amazing thing to see.
That's so great. I love this. Oh my gosh, I've had so much fun. So every podcast, as you guys know, we give away gifts. And I know that you have a gift to give away to somebody who is watching, I'm going to say not live, but watching today. And somebody who might not catch the show today, or they did catch it today, but they're going to leave a comment on the blog. And I'll explain all that out here in a minute. But do you want to tell them what they are having, what they have a chance to win?
Yay! It's our latest field guide, number 5, with Cecilia Campochiaro. All 4 of the patterns are by her, and it's a really short little Julia Child kitchen wisdom introduction to all of the principles of sequence knitting, and it's got, you know, 4 beautiful patterns by Cecilia in it. And it's another one of our Melanie Fallick books, so the photography is just gorgeous. So look at that. And
oh, look, I'm wearing one right now. It's very beautiful.
Yay. So we've got 2 of these to give away. And so we'll give away one to your person who's listening today.
Yes. So usually, as you guys know, when the podcast was purely audio and I was on Blog Talk Radio, I was able to have people call in. Well, we did try and sign into Blog Talk Radio today, and we got no sound, just like last week. So this is why we're doing the video now, right? So because I have no way of having somebody come on live, not that I am aware of, if one of you out there has some sort of technology wisdom that you're like, no, click this and that, and then we can get somebody on live, like randomly select a winner, I would love to do that. But here's my workaround. As you guys know, I am on YouTube right now, and I'm on Facebook Live. What stinks is that on YouTube, all of the live chat comments go away as soon as we go off air. But then on Facebook, all the live chat comments stay. So you have 2 different things here. I want you to go ahead. All of the live chat comments go away. Is that Ann? Sorry. No, it's okay. On Facebook, if you guys will leave a comment on the comments area, including a keyword that Ann and Kay will give us here in just a minute, that will be your entry ticket for a chance to win the sequence book. If you are watching on YouTube, within the next 24 hours, if you will leave a comment on YouTube, remember, if you're leaving a comment right now on the live chat, it goes away, so it won't be counted. But if you leave a comment on YouTube, that will also be entered for a chance to win. I'll randomly select a winner either from YouTube or Facebook for the live giveaway winner. That's the only way I can do it right now. Hopefully we'll come up with a better way soon, but that's what I have right now. If you're not listening live, or maybe you want another chance to win, over on marleybird.com on the blog, there are show notes for today's show that include a brief synopsis of the show, maybe some photographs, some links, all the good stuff. So when you go to marleybird.com, find the show notes for today's podcast and leave a comment on there. We usually select the winner from those comments about 2 to 3 weeks after the original air date, and we give a prize away there as well. Your comments in all of these places must include a keyword. What should their keyword be, you guys?
Sequence?
Sequence. That's the name of the field guide, you guys. It's called Sequence. So leave the keyword sequence in your comment on YouTube on the video, on Facebook Live on the video, and then include it in the show notes comments. Lots of comments. And we'll randomly select a winner from the YouTube and Facebook. Like, we'll select one winner from those tomorrow. And on the show notes, we'll select that in about 2 to 3 weeks. For example, several weeks ago, we had the lovely Allison Allison Hoffman on the podcast from Crafty is Cool. Hopefully you guys are following along with her on Facebook because she's making some super cute amigurumi stuff. It's just adorable. And so she is giving away a prize, and her keyword was Crafty is Cool. She's giving away her copy of her book, Amigurumi Pets. The comment winner is Crystal BZ, and your comment was, Crafty is cool. I love amigurumi. I jokingly call it yarn sculpting. My most recent amigurumi creation is Sonic the Hedgehog. He measured 14 inches. He is the largest scale amigurumi project I've ever completed, and boy, I loved it. Well, Crystal, congratulations. You win a copy of that book. And don't forget, Allison Hoffman was also a guest on Vicki Howell's The Knit Show, so you can check her out on there as well. Super easy. So that's how easy it is to win, guys. Just leave your comments literally just everywhere and include the word sequence. Too bad. I love having people call in because it's fun to get like their live reaction, but I just don't know how to make it work with this yet. So, but we'll learn. We'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. So I talked to you guys earlier about, having the technology kind of dictate the progression of my podcast, where it was just, used to be that I would record the podcast and edit. Then it became where it was just a live show. And then it became where I could do Facebook Live. And now it's Facebook Live and YouTube Live. And technology has really forced me in a different path for my career, which is fine. I love it, right? And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining me on this new adventure. And I have loved how technology has taken you from being two women in completely different parts of the country and bringing you together, and then bringing all of us along this ride with you. Because it's a treat to watch you guys grow all of this.
Oh, thank you so much.
Seriously, it's really cool. Well, I have loved having you guys on. You're welcome to come on whenever you want to come on and like share something new with everybody. Just let me know, and you're welcome to come on over here.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to say thank you guys, and that wraps up the show. So I'm going to say thank you to all of you listening today and watching today on Facebook and YouTube. And let's say thank you to our lovely sponsors, the Buffalo Wool Company, Erin Lane Bags, Stitches.Events, Creative Bug, where hopefully you guys watched the Creative Bug live yesterday because it was pretty darn cool. Craftsy.com, and last but certainly not least, Red Heart Yarns, where I'm the proud national spokesperson, and it's the home of Chic Sheep Yarn by Marley Bird. Thanks for joining us today, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.